So can I have your attention, please, for Mr. Jim Schubert?
Good morning, everyone. And as soon as we get the presentation up, I'll start. Just a reminder to all the students, there is a waste pyramid essay and poster competition, so hopefully you've taken a look at it. The deadline is March 31st, and there might be some good information in this presentation that you can actually use for that essay and poster competition. And after that technology talk, usually technology fails, so here it is. So what I'd like to talk to you about today is kind of give you a Waste Management 101, and then follow it up with some of the waste management technologies that are associated in modern systems nowadays, and then go into what is integrated waste management, because that's what we really want to be doing in the Cayman Islands in the future. And I'll give you an example of what's dear to my heart, which is the Edmonton Waste Management Center, which I was involved in for the past 15 years. And then just talk about a little bit about what we're doing as far as getting ready for an integrated solid waste management system. So there's a process we're following, why we're actually doing a national strategy document exercise, because one has never been done in the past. So it won't get derailed in the future when politicians shift. So Cayman Islands has developed, and you've seen it in the poster essay, and it's been released, a waste hierarchy, which ranks sound strategies for municipal solid waste, and it actually follows international standards, including the US EPA waste hierarchy. And it follows the 4 R's principle, which is reduce, reuse, recycle, recover, and then the remaining material will need to go to a landfill, and that's illustrated in that upside down pyramid that's been developed, and you'll see a lot of that in the future, because it is kind of the new symbol for waste management in the Cayman Islands. So the reduce and reuse are 2 portions of that hierarchy, and really they're source reduction. So that's at the home or at the producer, and it can take on a number of different forms. That can be reusing bags, or donating items, buying things in bulk, reduced packaging, and redesigning products so that they can be used again and again. And in the old days, things like milk was delivered in glass bottles, and you brought those containers back and they were reused. Now everything is single use, so there could be a shift again. Unfortunately, the producers have gone to this one-time use, but there's nothing saying that you can't go back to things the way it was done in the old days. The recycle part of the waste hierarchy is a series of activities. So one is to collect the recyclables, another one is to sort them and send them back to actual recycling facilities, and then the third part is actually having consumers buy those recyclable materials, since a lot of times the recycling material comes with a cost. So it's a premium over virgin materials. Someday that may change, but right now a lot of the recycled materials cost more than virgin materials. And it also includes handling the organics through composting. And the recovery piece is converting what's left over from the 3 R's to turn it into a useful heat, electricity, and or fuels and chemicals, which you get into with some advanced technologies that I'll talk about in the future, which include combustion, gasification, pyrolysis, anaerobic digestion, and landfill gas recovery. And they often refer to these as waste energy technologies. And no matter what we do, there'll always be a need for landfill. So hopefully we'll minimize what goes into a landfill, so we'll have a smaller footprint landfill, or we'll have a landfill that just handles a specified type of material. But nowadays, everything and anything is going into that landfill, but there will always be a need for it. After the landfill is actually closed, it can be used for recreation uses, and hopefully that's what will happen here. I'm pretty sure it won't be a golf course, it's too sloped at Mount Trashmore, or it won't be a ski slope, but that has been done in the past. So moving on to some of the waste management technologies, and I'll talk about recycling, composting, some traditional combustion systems, and then get into some of the more advanced thermal processes. So in recycling, most materials go to what's termed a materials recovery facility. So basically, it's a facility that your recycling material gets sorted at. And if you look inside, and this is looking inside the facility in Edmonton, it's a series of mechanical conveyors and separation equipment that will sort out the various types of paper, plastic, metals, and glass, so that at the end of the day, recyclable material that comes in commingled into a tip floor like this gets sorted into various what we call bunkers of commodities. And from that, we then bale those commodities into about 1 meter cubed, and then they're sent to an actual recycler. So they sort the material, we bale it, and then we send it to a recycler that handles thousands of tons of that particular material. So the challenge on the Cayman Islands is getting enough material to send to a market. So to give you a good example, a quart milk jug, and that's the white opaque #2 plastic, it takes about 16,000 milk jugs to make a bale. And you need about 15 to 20 bales to put into the standardized containers that go on the ships. So you need a whole lot of milk jugs for a shipment to go off-site. So the challenge for some of the recycling material is to get enough of it before you can send it offshore. Composting facility, and this is a shot of the Edmonton facility, it's the largest in North America, is basically, this is an aerobic system, and inside, and you do it indoors. This is for food waste, and food waste is different than yard waste in the sense that the food waste will smell a lot, so you'll generate a lot of nuisance complaints if it's not done in a very controlled fashion. And in Edmonton, that facility is all done indoors where all the air is collected. It goes through what's called a biofilter, and the air is cleaned or deodorized somewhat. It changes the essence of it to a cigar-like smell, but there still is an odor to it, but most people like a cigar smell versus a rotting garbage smell that comes out of that facility. So everything's done indoors. Yard waste is a little bit different. It doesn't break down the same way, so you don't generate the same sorts of odors. So that you could do that outdoors in a windrow type setting, and this is looking at some larger windrows that we have. And then you have a turning device that looks quite funky, but it goes over the pile and agitates the material, and you add moisture so that the composting process can continue. So the fourth R, thermal treatment, I really think it needs to be applied after the recycling. The 3 R's are done basically, and that's really so that there's public acceptance. And there's a big opposition in North America, especially the US, and there hasn't been a new facility built there since the early 90s because people don't like combustion. They think it's dirty technology, it takes away from recycling and composting, but I think there is a need for it, and the need is after you've done as much as you can to reduce, reuse, and recycle the material, there's still going to be a need for a material to be treated in some form or fashion, or a large chunk of it's going to go to landfill. So how you can do that is by recovering the energy value in that waste and turning it into something useful. And in the Cayman Islands, power is very expensive. It would make a lot of sense to go that route. In other areas where power is cheap, you can go to things like chemicals and fuels that have a higher value or return for what you produce. And it does reduce the amount of volume going to landfill significantly, normally about 90% by volume, and you deal with the waste here and now. So most landfills, including the one that is here, is storing the waste. So we're not really dealing with the waste, we're just building Mount Trashmore for the future generations to deal with, because the material will remain there. Some of it may break down, some of it is slowly leaving the site, but the majority of it is there for future generations to deal with. So when you were to combust or treat the material, you're dealing with it here and now. And just some facts on the thermal side, like typically 1 ton of municipal solid waste will deliver about half a megawatt, 500 kilowatts back to the grid. And 1 ton of MSW has the same energy content as a barrel of oil or a quarter ton of coal. So if we maximize the 3 R's, what this Sankey diagram shows is there's still a significant portion of waste that needs to go to landfill. And if you add the 4th R, hopefully you're going to minimize the amount of material going to landfill. Okay. A typical waste energy or combustion system involves putting waste in a bunker. There's the actual combustion or incineration portion, where you heat the material up to temperatures around 1,000 degrees Celsius. So everything is combusted and you produce a lot of heat, which then goes into a steam boiler. And that steam then drives a steam turbine, which goes back into the grid, and that's where you generate that 500 megawatt or 500 kilowatts per ton. The rest of the equipment is all gas cleanup. So the standards for emission standards off of waste energy plants are very low, such that, you know, if anyone were to tell me, well, why would you build a waste energy plant here? I would have no problem with it, because they're lower than any of the emission standards for conventional power production with coal or oil. And that seems to be fine. People don't have a problem with it. So there's a significant portion of the capital cost of a new facility that's all spent on cleaning up whatever is in that gas afterwards, from particulate to any acid gases. They all get reacted, and they're minimal emissions. This is what a kind of a typical waste energy plant looks like. It would look like a coal-fired power plant from the outside. There are some funkier designs. This is a facility in Japan that's been constructed, and that facility on the bottom right is on the Isle of Man, and it's approximately the same size as what would be needed here. So you can end up putting in some very architecturally pleasing facilities. Kind of a new technology, a lot's been talked about, is gasification or pyrolysis, so I thought I'd spend a little bit of time so at the end of the day you at least know the difference between traditional combustion versus some of these advanced technologies. But it's the chemical conversion using heat to break down solid particles to produce a synthesized gas, which typically is CO and hydrogen, and a char or slag residue. So again, you have a residue with anything you produce. It does take place in a reactor, and it needs heat, so it's endothermic. And how you produce that heat is by combusting a small portion of the waste stream to generate the heat. So I mentioned with combustion you need about 800 or 1,000 degrees Celsius. With a gasifier you might be in the 800 to 1,000 degrees Celsius range, and you produce that heat by burning a small portion of the material to produce that. It's called partial oxidation. So what's the major difference between traditional incineration and gasification? In combustion, it's like if you have a fireplace or outside, you're trying to burn the material completely, or in the landfill here at Georgetown, when it doesn't burn, it's gasifying. So you're not trying to produce black smoke or anything like that. You're trying to get a lot of air into it so that it's nice and clean. You produce a lot of heat, and it needs to be used there on site. And you do that by providing a whole lot of excess air. So typically you provide 200% excess air, so twice the amount of air you would need to burn that material so it's nice and clean. In gasification, you're trying to convert the feedstock to syngas, that's CO and hydrogen, and you produce a syngas that when it's cleaned, it could be used like natural gas or propane, and it could be transported somewhere. So it has a lot of different usage, and it's done in a reducing environment, which is about 1/6 of the oxygen. So in engineering terms, everything is significantly smaller because of the amount of air or oxygen you add to the system. So all the pumps, all the vessels, all of the piping is significantly smaller because of the amount of air going through the system. Hopefully that's not too technical for everyone. The other thing is you don't usually have a big honking stack like you have on a traditional waste energy facility, and the size of the facility is quite a bit smaller. So those are all good things. This just illustrates the different types of material you can handle in the reactor, or called gasifier. The waste or the syngas gets cleaned up. You could actually strip the hydrogen and use it for neat things like fuel cells, or you can convert the CO and hydrogen to liquid fuels and chemicals, but you also have the suite of different power options. So there's way more versatility going with a gasification route over traditional systems. So that all sounds good. The problem is there's very few commercial facilities that have been developed to date. I think in the next 10 or 15 years, they will be there. So there'll be a lot more options for it, but right now there's only maybe 1 or 2 vendors that have built a commercial scale system, so there's a lot of risk, and there's usually a higher cost that comes with this technology, but it is something that's coming in the future. I just wanted to move on now. What is integrated solid waste? And I'll give you the example of Edmonton, since we've built a very integrated solid waste management system. And it all kind of starts with education and community relations. It's part of the grade 4 curriculum in Edmonton, so all the teachers give a standard 2-week session on waste management. And they also tour our facility, so they see hands-on what's going on. And what they're doing is hopefully teaching all of the parents, all the old dogs, the right things to do with waste management in the future. And it also covers things that we don't want coming into the waste stream to begin with, like household haz waste, the batteries, the fluorescent tubes, paints and solvents. There's also been a big kind of waste tourism and this world map. We've had visitors come from all over the world to come see our facilities. I think there's none from Cayman Islands, otherwise, well, maybe I can put my name there the next time I go and visit it, but there's a lot of interest in what we're doing because we've built this world-class facility. The other thing we've put in is what we call eco stations. So when they handle the problematic materials, and people love it, they store up these materials because they usually don't take up a lot of space, and they know it affects our systems through the education, but it's a place where we can take all the paint, solvents, used oils, e-waste, small appliances, and they get processed properly and never end up coming to any of our municipal systems. We also have a number of community recycling depots where we collect source segregated recyclables so they don't have to come to our recycling facility and just get baled directly, which saves a lot of costs. The Waste Management Center itself is about 550 acres, and there's 12 different processing facilities there. There's also 2 research facilities where we're doing ongoing work in the waste area. Our landfill is now closed. Should have mentioned, why did we build all this? Well, our landfill was due to close in the 90s, and we couldn't find a new landfill, so it's similar situations to here on the Cayman Islands. And so they went the route of diversion as the option. And we've set up a number of different arrangements. Some of the facilities we own and operate, some of them we own and contract out. Some of them are totally privately owned. So we've developed a number of different partnerships depending on the facility that's put in place, and it has generated employment. So back in the 90s, there was maybe 20 to 30 people working at the landfill. There's over 450 different people working there now, and it's not, you know, just labor positions. There's a lot of technician, engineering, even research positions that have all been employed out at our site. So this is what our integrated waste management system looks like. It's kind of, there's a lot to it. I won't spend a lot of time on it other than to say that a number of inputs from one facility go to another one, and some of them actually even circle back to some of our other facilities. But what I will do is show you a simplified version of what we're doing. So basically, at the end of the day, we're taking the recyclable material, sending it to our material recovery facility, or MRF, and that makes up about 20% of our incoming waste stream. We're taking the organic material out at an integrated processing facility and composting it, and that covers about 40%. And then what remains as residuals from our recycling and composting all go to our what we call biofuels facility. It's a gasification-based system which converts that into ethanol. And ethanol, there's ethanol blends in fuels nowadays, so there's a need for ethanol. And you may have heard all the bad news about using corn to produce ethanol and people starving because they can't have food. But using waste to produce ethanol is kind of a neat way of using that material for a higher end use. So at the end of the day, we're at about 90% diversion. This facility is just being commissioned now, so we're not there. We're at about 60%. But we're looking to divert about 90% of the waste stream. Just a little bit more about the actual facilities that are all here. And this was all, it didn't happen overnight. I started there in '99 when this materials recovery facility was first built and went into operation. So that was the first facility that came online. That was followed up, or I guess this doesn't go in order of when facilities opened up, but we also have electronics and metal recycling facilities. So they take all of the e-waste and small appliances, white goods, anything metal, anything with a cord they're interested in. They're privately owned and operated. They're on site. We've had our biosolids lagoons. That's the digested sludge that's left over from our wastewater treatment plant that comes on site. And it's actually a substantial area. It's about 80 acres, and we take about 5,000 to 10,000 of that and mix it in with our composting process to produce a biosolids compost. We collect leachate, which is the garbage juice that would percolate through our landfill, and pre-treat it so that it can go into our wastewater treatment facility, and that's located on site. We have built what's called a GORE biosolids composting facility. So people are familiar with GORE. It's Gore-Tex. It's used in waterproofing jackets. Well, they've developed a system where this GORE material is used to cover up compost piles. So I mentioned odors from composting. Well, the GORE will act as an odor absorbent. It retains moisture, and the moisture acts as an odor thing. So they love this because they can sell $25,000 worth of GORE with these tarps that are 10 meters wide by 30 meters long in their process, instead of selling, I don't know, 100,000 jackets that they need to. There is some of these windrow mass bed operations, so we're doing this all on site. There's a new facility called Gray's Recycling. That's a big dome, and they take cotton and computer type paper and produce a gray recycled paper on site. They're totally, it's jointly owned now with the city and Gray's Recycling. We have a special waste handling facility in conjunction with our University of Alberta, where they take all of their spent chemicals and bulk them on site before taking them off site. And there's a couple of research facilities. I won't spend a lot of time on it, but basically one is on gasification to produce different products, and the other one is to look at different recycling and composting technologies. And that's a partnership with the universities in the Edmonton area as well as the province. This integrated processing and transfer facility opened up in phases. So one was to transfer waste, so it's usually where our landfill closed, but we still needed to move waste. So what happens is smaller trucks get loaded into larger semi-trailer trucks, and that goes to an outside landfill since we don't have one any longer. And then we added the processing pieces afterwards, so it separates the organics, and then it also processes the material to produce what we call a refuse-derived fuel fluff that goes to our biofuels facility. So big facility, about a $100 million investment from the city. The biofuels facility itself, that's an older slide, so it's just showing basically early parts of construction, but it was startup commissioning, that's a little old too, this past summer, and from 120,000 tons of this residual waste, they expect to produce 35 million liters of ethanol. We also collect landfill gas from our old landfill that's now closed, and it generates about 4 megawatts, and it goes back into the grid. This is just a support equipment building, but, and then the biggest of our facilities, which opened back in 2000, is our composting facility, and still the largest in North America. So, one more. I'm just about done here. So we also just opened up a C&D, waste recycling operation, so it takes construction and demolition waste, which is different than municipal solid waste, and processes that into usable components. So I guess if you followed all of this, it's all located in one site. It's kind of a one-stop shop for waste. So, and a number of facilities are connected with conveyors, so an output from one goes into another, so it is a very integrated waste site and operation. If you visit a number of operations elsewhere, you'd probably spend a big part of your day driving from a recycling facility to a composting facility located somewhere else, so they're not interconnected and integrated to the same degree. So just the last few slides are on the future integrated solid waste management system. And why are we doing a strategy in the first place? I hear that a lot. There's a hot topic here since I've gotten here. And well, the answer is a strategy has never been done for the Cayman Islands. There's been a number of kind of ad hoc proposals put in place, unsolicited proposals. They've all taken off, and then there's been an election, and they get derailed. So what the strategy will do is set a 50-year path forward for dealing with our waste, which hopefully won't get derailed when there's change in political power, and it will set the path forward to dealing with waste on a 50-year cycle, not on a government 3 or 4 year cycle. So that's the big difference. So we're in the process of developing the strategy, and I have a timeline at the back at the end of this, so you can see where we're at. But we're also looking at the existing sites. So we're doing environmental investigations and assessment on the sites, developing the strategy, and from the strategy we get into what we call phase 2 work, which is an outline business case that needs to go back to the UK for approval, and then we plan to actually procure a number of services and infrastructure depending on what the strategy and the outline business case outcome is. So in the investigations, we're through the first 2 or 3 bullets. So basically, we've done some initial work. AMEC has been our consultant for that out of the UK, and they've looked at our landfill. They're planning to come back with what we call our phase 2 designing an approach where we're resampling from all of the 3 landfills and also filling some data gaps. So they're putting in some new monitoring wells at both Georgetown landfill and the Cayman Brack landfill, since there aren't any monitoring wells there, and testing those to see what levels of contamination are coming from each of the landfills. In our strategy, we're in the process of getting what we call a stage 1 report from them. And right now, we've received a draft that's about the 5th bullet down for a waste policy in the islands, and we're planning to roll that out in April in info sessions for any of the residents to take a look at, as well as we should have by that time a shorter list, and I'll show that here, of options or scenarios for comment on what AMIC has put forward based on our steering committee workshops that we've had in terms of what would be acceptable here in the Cayman Islands for the residents and moving forward. So, and AMIC will then take those short list options and run them through a number of different models to see what their strengths and weaknesses are. We'll have some ballpark capital and OPEX type numbers, and that leads into what I was saying about the stakeholder engagement. From that, they'll develop a draft report or waste strategy, and we'll have more consultation on the options they're actually recommending for moving forward. And that goes into the second part, which is the outline business case, where KPMG is getting involved in, and they're doing more detailed financial modeling. It needs to then meet the FFR requirements that go back to the UK for approval, and they're going to be looking at the 6 points on the last bullet below. So what the strategic fit is, economic benefits, technology, viability, variability, commercial and other risks, and then start talking about how a preferred option could be delivered from a procurement standpoint. I won't talk a lot about this, but this is talking about the procurement stage, but right now it's wide open. It could be done very openly, like say we need to get to 90% diversion and leave it open to the proponent to come up with an option. We could do a number of different steps where we pre-qualify proponents and then have a short list. So these are just some things in the future that will be considered. We're talking about early next year to do that, and we haven't finalized how the procurement will move forward. This is just an outline of the strategy up to the end of procurement. And you can't read any of these, but basically this column over here is the latter part of 2013. So all of 2014, 2015 will be done doing the waste strategy and the environmental investigations for the first part, and then the OBC will be done the second half of this year, and all of next year, or by the end of next year, we hope to have a new system or facility procured. So we're still a ways away from implementing, and that's only procuring it. That's not actually putting a system in place, right? So these things take a lot of time to develop. System in Edmonton took over 15 years. So not unless we have the magic bullet to move forward, and even if you do, it takes a long time to procure these facilities, and if they go the route that's been suggested, which is a public-private partnership, it's a 20 to 25 year contract you'd be signing with a proponent to run those operations. So you want to make sure everything is done the way you want, because you're going to have a contract with that person that company for a long time. So that's about all I wanted to say at this point. I smell the food, it smells good, so, but if you have any questions, feel free.
Thank you, Jim. Can we take some questions, please?
Hi. I just want to ask you, what's the cost in Edmonton per taxpayer of the facilities you have there? And what will be the cost to the taxpayer in the Cayman Islands once you have a facility in place? It doesn't matter how many stages you have of that. What, in your view, what will be the cost?
Well, in Edmonton, I'd have to look up the current rate, but I believe it is right around $420 per household. We've set up a waste utility in Edmonton, so all of the waste services, collection, processing, and disposal are paid out of your utility bill, just like you pay for power or water, and it's a set rate, so we don't have meters or things like that. It's hard to do. You can do it in waste, it just, you know, you have to equip the trucks and things like that, and it ends up getting more costly, but it's about $420 per household. So that pays for everything in Edmonton. Per month, sorry. Oh, sorry, $420 per year. I believe it's like $36 per month. I'd have to check. My math isn't that good, but whatever that is. So, and in Cayman Islands, I would expect once the facility is totally developed, those would be the ballpark type costs you'd expect to pay. We don't pay taxes here, so we would need to come up with a different formula. I know they've been talking about different things, so I don't really want to comment on it, but it could come back in the form of a utility bill. It could be put on as a additional duty to pay for materials as they come in, to pay for waste management. So at this point, it's not been defined how that will actually be paid, but I'd expect the same kind of costs here. Maybe even more because it's a smaller island and your economies of scale, unfortunately, aren't there.
It is false to think that we don't pay taxes in the Cayman Islands. We do pay taxes. We pay, they call them fees. We pay taxes on consumption. We don't pay taxes on salary. We don't pay taxes on property, but we pay a lot in other taxes.
Sure, yeah.
You have another question?
I was very interested in hearing you say there might be a problem getting enough recyclable material. But a few years ago, we used to have 2 collections of refuse, garbage a week. And then the person in your department responsible for looking after the maintenance of the trucks dropped the ball, and we've had to be 1 collection a week. It would surely make sense to go back to the 2 collections a week, having 1 for pure garbage and 1 for recyclable goods, plastic, cans, and that kind of thing. And we could even have, like, I mean, it's not rocket science, the rest of the world does it. You have things in your house, 1 for the bottles, 1 for this, and then the bin men come round and collect that, and it goes to your recyclable place. Now, an entrepreneur on the island, I don't know who, has come with these little blue bins that are not fit for purpose for putting recyclable material in at Kirk's and Foster's and so on. And an absolute eyesore, that overflowing. People are going to get the wrong impression of recycling. I loved your recycling depot in Edmonton. We could have those on the island, and you would surely get enough material. And all over the States, they pay for plastic bottles and cans going back. Only a few cents, but you don't see a can or bottle on the floor in San Francisco. You see people collecting them to sell them, and that would help as well. So there's lots of things we can be doing to get the amount of recyclable materials that we need, because there's lots of containers going back to the US empty that could be full of recyclable material that will be bringing in money for the island. And I dream of the day, and your talk was most excellent, when you can show pictures of Cayman and say, we. Yeah? Thank you.
I like your comments. Those are all kind of things we've even thrown out at the committee level, saying that, you know, these are things we can do. I fully expect some of the things like the depots you mentioned will be done sooner than later. So we don't need a big infrastructure to set that up. Some of those type activities actually aren't even, you know, I'll call it not of interest to entrepreneurs. They're interested in the recyclable, but maybe not the collection of it. So, but the government could take over setting up larger depots that are properly run, where you have large enough bins, because I fully agree, they're kind of like baby steps, and those bins that they use are put out at curbside and other municipalities. That's what residents put their recycling material in. So, you know, and I use them myself, and I hope I'm one of the first 3 guys to use them, because otherwise they're full. So, you know, when it does come online, I hope and fully expect that we'll have these larger centers where people can run them and they're manned properly. So, but I appreciate your comments, and, you know, hopefully when the info sessions come around, I think one of the things that is very positive within the island, there's lots of interest to make changes. It's a smaller place where you can get more of a community setting where you can get everyone involved, and there is that sense of pride to make a difference so that things don't get chucked out at curbside or don't get thrown, you know, on the roadside. So, you know, it will come. That's all I can say. Yeah. Yes, I'm pushing. I've been on the curbside collecting waste, actually, so, and seen it firsthand.
Jim, we have another question.
Sure.
Hi, Jim. I really enjoyed the talk. It looks like very likely that the new facility that you're talking about is going to have to share a site with the old one. So you're going to inherit the old landfill. And I know we had a study in 1992 that showed we had a lot of leachate at the time. We had heavy metals and PCBs in quite elevated quantities in the canals adjacent to the landfill and in the North Sound. What can be done, you know, what part of the strategy is going to deal with the old landfill? Or what can be put in place to stop that leachate, and what are the plans for the future?
Well, it hasn't been defined yet what the plans are for the future. I know from the initial investigation and review of monitoring information, yes, things are leaching from the landfills. They're unlined landfill, but all of the leachate is tidal, so it moves in and out. So there is a dilution solution to pollution that's happening right now with the landfills, unfortunately, or fortunately, because otherwise it would be a bigger problem. But we're waiting for what AMEC comes back to us on that. There are some options to look at mining the old landfill, especially at Georgetown, to see if we can, you know, reduce the amount of material that's in there. So those are some of the options. There ultimately someday in the future there will be a need for a new landfill. So hopefully when that happens, it will be a modern sanitary landfill that has a liner, so we don't have the same impact. But those are kinds of things we're looking at right now.
Sorry, you just mentioned a possible move in the future. How far in the future are we looking?
That I can't comment on right now. So, but all landfills have finite lives. So using the example of Edmonton, we were able to extend the life of our landfill by diverting a big portion of the waste stream. So if we continue on our same path, I see that landfill being full sooner than later.
All right. Thank you.
Okay.
You did mention you were looking at 8 possible shortlisted options. Would any of those options be a move to another site?
I don't think so. Those are processing options right now. So at this point, no. But in the future, and it may be part of what AMEC comes back to us on, because they haven't come back to us with an estimated life of the Georgetown site. If they say it's 2 years, then we'll have to look for a site sooner than later. If they say 10 to 15 years, then there's some more time to look for a future site.
Thank you so much.